At the wedding ceremony, my boyfriend's 8-year-old brother secretly set off firecrackers inside my wedding dress. The dress caught fire, leaving me severely burned and disfigured. My boyfriend's family promised my parents they would spare no effort to treat me and would take care of me for the rest of my life. But on their way home, overwhelmed with grief, my parents were involved in a car accident and died. My boyfriend's family immediately changed their attitude, saying that when I was rescued, my clothes were stripped off, making me an unclean woman. They directly gave up on treatment, took me home, and neglected me, leading to my death from infected wounds. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the time before the wedding began. Smiling, I asked my boyfriend, "Darling, would you like to have a different kind of wedding? You wear the wedding dress, and I'll wear the suit," watching my playful friends and drunken boyfriend. I realized I had been reborn, returned to the night before the wedding. Back then, as I prepared to step into a new life with my friend's blessings, little did I know I was actually stepping into hell. My boyfriend's younger brother, Dong Dong, was the late-born child of the family, excessively spoiled and a textbook example of a brat, because at this very moment in my past life, as we bid farewell to our friends and headed back to the hotel to prepare for the wedding, we saw Dong Dong playing with firecrackers. I casually advised him a couple of times to be careful and not touch that thing, never expecting he would hold a grudge. During the wedding ceremony the next day, as I was walking from the audience area to the stage, he secretly stuffed firecrackers into the train of my wedding dress and lit them. The soft fabric of the dress caught fire immediately, the scorched material melting into my skin, continuously burning my entire body. At that moment, overwhelming pain consumed me. I don't remember how I was rescued or how I ended up in the hospital. Waking up in the hospital, I realized I had suffered severe burns and was disfigured. My boyfriend Miles Chen and his family, in order to protect Dong Dong, promised to do everything in their power to heal me and ensure Miles Chen would treat me well for the rest of my life. Our family's financial situation wasn't great, and my heartbroken parents had no choice but to suppress their hatred, prioritizing my treatment above all else. Little did anyone know, on their way home to pack belongings before returning to care for me, they were involved in a car accident, destroying the vehicle and claiming their lives on the spot. The Chen family immediately changed their expressions, cursing me as shameless and promiscuous, because on the day of the wedding, when I was rescued, my clothes were torn off in public. They refused to spend another penny on my treatment, discharged me directly, and left me at home without care. In the end, I died from an infected wound. Their family actually paid no price at all and even inherited what belonged to me and my parents. How can I possibly accept this? In this life, I'll make Miles Chen's family taste the bitter consequences too. After seeing off my friends, when I noticed Dong Dong playing with firecrackers, I still tried to gently persuade him with a few words. "Dong Dong, firecrackers are very dangerous, it's better to stay away from them. If they explode, you could get hurt." Seeing this, Father Chen nearby became somewhat displeased. Dong Dong may be young, but he knows his limits. There's no way he could hurt anyone. In my previous life, I had a lot going on with the wedding and ended up arguing with Miles Chen, so my tone wasn't good. The Chen parents directly pointed at my nose and scolded me, saying I was meddling in their family affairs before even marrying into the family. Seeing Dong Dong's small eyes glaring at me fiercely, I sighed. I had done all I could. "Uncle and Auntie, rest early. Today Miles Chen went with me to decorate at the hotel. Tomorrow morning, his groomsmen will pick him up, and then they'll come to the hotel together to get me." With that, she pulled the drunken Miles Chen and was about to leave. I hadn't closed their front door tightly, and after just a few steps, I heard Mrs. Chen's rather sharp voice. "She hasn't even married into our family yet, and she's already nitpicking and finding fault with our son. If she does marry in, will our Dong Dong even have a peaceful life?" Hearing this almost made me laugh in anger. I wondered why this brat always showed such hostility towards me every time I came. I'm afraid the Chen parents have probably said such things more than once. Who knows, maybe they played a part in that incident in my past life when the brat burned me with firecrackers. Do I really have to go through with this marriage? I'm from out of town, and my parents along with relatives and friends are all at the hotel. Upon arriving at the hotel, I sent Miles Chen off to sober up first while I went to find my parents. I wanted to see if I could persuade my parents to support me in running away from the wedding. There are plenty of ways to get back at their family. There's no need to sacrifice me in the process. But as soon as I mentioned to my parents that I didn't want to get married, the two of them, who had been wiping away tears, suddenly stopped and threw me out. He even threatened that if I dared to make trouble, he wouldn't acknowledge me anymore. Helpless, I returned to the room where a group of our friends and the makeup artist were waiting. After we finished our tasks, Miles Chen sobered up a bit. Seeing everyone enthusiastically urging me to try on the wedding dress, I suddenly shuddered and quickly pulled Miles Chen aside, giving him a gentle smile. "Darling, how about we have a unique wedding? You wear the wedding dress, and I'll wear the suit. I've developed a complete aversion to wedding dresses now and never want to wear one again in my life." Seeing the excitement, everyone immediately started egging us on. Miles Chen didn't want to agree, but also didn't want to outright refuse me and upset me right before the wedding, so he came up with an excuse. "Cleo, our parents and relatives are quite traditional people. If we do something too trendy, they might not be able to accept it." At that moment, the makeup artist suddenly chimed in. "Don't worry, bro, it's just about giving your wedding a unique opening. After we're done, I'll quickly change you back into your original outfits, and we'll stick to the original plan. It'll be fast, trust my skills." The makeup artist's bold chest-thumping guarantee wasn't because she suddenly had a change of heart, but because I had just sent her a huge red envelope via WeChat. Super huge. Miles Chen's friend, who was also enjoying the drama, egged him on. "Come on, Chen, maybe posting it online will make you go viral. You could become an internet celebrity and never have to work again. You just got married. This could be a double win for both love and career." His friend really knew him well. Hitting the nail on the head, he had wanted to start a self-media channel for a long time but never gained traction. Wasn't this the perfect ready-made material? Seeing him waver a bit, I decided to fan the flames directly. "If you agree to this, after we get married, I'll hand over my salary card to you. You'll have full control over our family's finances." Making empty promises. Who can't do that? For now, let's just get through this wedding. But as soon as these words were spoken, Miles Chen's good friends immediately started egging him on. "I'm so moved by this. If my wife were willing to hand over her salary card to me, forget wearing a wedding dress, I'd even wear a bikini." "Brother Chen, even after your wife said that, you still won't agree. Are you even a man?" With the atmosphere hyped up to this point and the alcohol kicking in, Miles Chen agreed without hesitation. Everyone burst into cheerful laughter, including me. Miles Chen agreed to it, and many things were prepared smoothly. I took out my phone and ordered a delivery service to buy a wig similar to Miles Chen's hairstyle, then went to the mall to buy a pair of thick-soled, height-increasing shoes. The makeup artist and the MC had to rearrange the schedule with us because we changed our minds at the last minute, but since I privately added extra money, they came to accommodate us. After a busy night, once we finished our makeup, I followed Miles Chen's friend to his house. Afraid that people might notice something unusual, I simply wore a mask, and Miles Chen's friend came out to cover for me, saying it was a special performance prepared for the wedding, although Miles Chen's parents had quite a few complaints about me because of this. We managed to avoid being discovered and quickly set off to pick up the bride. As for Miles Chen, although he was thin, his build was still more robust than mine. Following my suggestion, the makeup artist covered his head with a large piece of lace veil. From the outside, it looked faintly visible, giving the impression of a woman, but it was impossible to make out any details. Seeing this, I was extremely satisfied. Seems like the money was well spent. Finally arriving at the ceremony venue that had been a nightmare in my past life, I peered through the mask at my parents sitting in the audience, feeling a pang of sorrow in my heart. But now wasn't the time for sentimentality. I searched around and finally spotted my target, the mischievous kid, Dong Dong. Noticing him sneaking around, I curiously followed and took a look, only to be utterly shocked. In his previous life, he had only gotten a few small firecrackers, but this time, he was actually holding a bunch of sparklers and small strings of firecrackers in his arms. I quickly had someone pull him over to Mr. and Mrs. Chen, insisting they keep an eye on the kid and not let him set off fireworks recklessly. Only after seeing the family nod impatiently in agreement did I feel slightly relieved and went to follow the MC's procedures. Just before the ceremony began, I spotted a small figure sneaking up to Miles Chen, who was clueless in her wedding dress, and couldn't help but twitch my lips under the mask. Please welcome the bride, with the MC's voice. Miles Chen, wearing pristine lace gloves, led my father onto the stage. All eyes in the room were fixed on the two of them. And no one noticed a child sneaking around behind the bride. Perhaps someone did notice, but they likely dismissed it as just a mischievous child wanting to join in the excitement behind the bride. No one noticed the child secretly slipping firecrackers into the enormous skirt of the wedding dress. Then, they pulled out fireworks and stuffed them in as well. Finally, as the bride stood still at the front, the mischievous kid seemed a bit too greedy. The items weren't easy to light. The movements became too obvious. Spotting this, I quickly removed the mask from my face and shouted to everyone, "Quick, stop him, dong dong." But everyone thought it was part of the show, and instantly all eyes in the room were drawn to me. Many gasped in surprise, and soon the entire hall erupted in cheers. Meanwhile, under the cover of this commotion, Dong Dong successfully lit the fireworks. The sound of the fireworks burning was drowned out. Terrified, I reached out toward my father. Seeing me on the stage, he also laughed, let go of the bride Miles Chen, and strode toward me. The wedding dress itself is highly flammable, especially with its large train and oversized veil, so the dress on Miles Chen caught fire even faster than mine did in my previous life. When the fireworks ignited, he hadn't yet noticed anything amiss. Dong Dong, being small in stature, couldn't see what was happening on stage when he noticed the firecrackers starting to explode nearby. He immediately began clapping and jumping with excitement, seeing me continuously reaching out and shouting at him, "Take it off, take it off." Miles Chen finally sensed something was wrong. The burning sensation on his body, accompanied by his younger brother's malicious shouts beside him. He looked down and was horrified to find himself on fire. Panicking, he tried to tear off the wedding dress to save himself and also attempted to call for help from those around him. But the flames gave him no time to cry for help. Just like in my past life, within mere seconds, he was engulfed by the fire. No, his fate was even worse than mine. The burning veil on his head wrapped around him, turning him into a human torch. His screams instantly filled the scene. But he was even more ruthless than me. Realizing he couldn't break free from the flames, he immediately grabbed Dong Dong, originally frantic upon seeing their son on fire. The Chen parents now shrieked in horror as their eldest son tightly held onto their youngest son. Mr. Chen, in a panic, grabbed a bottle of liquor from the table and hurled it at Miles Chen. The alcohol splashed over him like adding fuel to the fire, causing the flames to surge 2 meters high. Miles Chen, in agony, "Let go." This is trying to kill Miles Chen. Even if I wanted to punish them, I couldn't let this torch ignite the scene and cause a fire. Everyone at the scene except Miles Chen's family is innocent. I quickly ran to grab the fire extinguisher and rushed over, shouting, "Move aside, you actually want to kill him. I won't allow you to harm Miles Chen." As I spoke, I aimed the fire extinguisher directly at Miles Chen and sprayed vigorously. As for the potential side effects of spraying a fire extinguisher directly at a person, sorry, I'm just a desperate woman trying to save the love of my life, seeing him about to be killed. How could I think of anything else? At the wedding venue, surprise turned to horror. Police cars, fire trucks, and ambulances arrived at the scene simultaneously. Seeing Miles Chen so severely burned, they quickly lifted him into the ambulance for emergency treatment, while Miles Chen's mother started causing trouble nearby. She grabbed the emergency doctors with Dong Dong, the mischievous child's scalded hand, insisting they treat her younger son's injuries first. After being refused, she threw a tantrum and yelled, "They're both my sons, how could I not care? But the older one might not even survive, so why not treat our younger one first?" The surrounding friends and relatives who heard this could barely hold back their reactions, all trying to persuade her to stop making a scene. Seeing Miles Chen's injuries were much more severe than in my previous life, how could I let him die now? He still has his uses. I charged forward, shoving aside Mrs. Chen, who had been obstructing the doctor's emergency efforts, and screamed at her through tears, "It's all because of your son. Why are you so determined to let Miles Chen die? What did he do wrong? Wasn't it enough that you wanted to burn him to death? Now you're even stopping the doctors from saving him. How could parents be so vicious?" Hearing this, the Chen parents panicked. With the police present, how could they afford to be labeled as murderers? They immediately tried to stop me from speaking, but long-displeased relatives, friends, and the police directly intervened to hold them back. Since Miles Chen's condition was urgent, I accompanied him to the hospital first, while my parents and Mr. Chen stayed behind at the wedding venue to handle the aftermath. Mrs. Chen followed us to the hospital with the unruly child to treat his wounds. Miles Chen suffered severe burns, with large areas of his skin fused to the burnt synthetic fabric, along with residue from the fire extinguisher chemicals. I sat outside the operating room, staring blankly at the red light. What was Miles Chen thinking when I was brought here in my past life? Before I could even begin to ponder the answer, someone suddenly slapped me across the face. Mrs. Chen, holding Dongdong's hand wrapped up like a pig's trotter, glared at me with fierce hostility. You shameless woman, if it weren't for you causing trouble at the wedding, how could my son have gotten into an accident? I covered my face as the hatred accumulated over 2 lifetimes surged within me, staring fixedly at her. I loudly demanded, your younger son's mischief caused your elder son to be seriously injured. How is that my fault? The brat glared at me with hatred and suddenly shouted. The firecrackers my mom bought for me were meant for you. If you hadn't swapped clothes with my brother, how could I have set them off on the wrong person? What does this mean? Could it be that in my past life, when he stuffed firecrackers on me, it was actually instructed by the Chen parents? Seeing the shock on Mother Chen's face at these words, I didn't want to think any further. A surge of old and new hatred overwhelmed me, and with a roar, I lunged forward and pinned Mother Chen to the ground. With a loud thud, the back of her head hit the floor, leaving her dazed. I swung my arms in wide arcs, slapping her face wildly over a dozen times, then grabbed her head and smashed it against the ground. He kept shouting while fighting, "This is premeditated murder. You're not just trying to kill me, but also Miles Chen. You're all beasts, worse than pigs and dogs." The people around were trying to intervene, but I looked too fierce. Even the mischievous kid Dongdong was too scared to step forward. It wasn't until the hospital security arrived that we were pulled apart. At that moment, seeing that I was restrained, Chen's mother tried to break free from the people holding her and came at me to hit me. How could I take such a loss? I immediately shouted, "Call the police. Help me call the police and arrest this murderer." My husband, who's still in critical care, was murdered by them. Hearing this, Chen's mother shrank back in fear. Initially, it was just a mischievous child causing an accident that led to his brother's severe injury. But if people were to find out she was the mastermind behind it, whether it would be considered murder or not would be hard to say. Overwhelmed by intense fear, she had no choice but to suppress her anger. With a stiff expression, she approached me to curry favor. "Cleo, you've misunderstood. The child was just talking nonsense. Don't be angry. As a mother, how could I not wish for my son and daughter-in-law to be happy?" Mrs. Chen thought she was being clever, but she didn't realize that this only made her appear guilty. So, even before Miles Chen came out of the operating room, his mother was taken away by the police. As the legally married wife of Miles Chen, the mischievous little boy Dongdong was temporarily placed under my care as his sister-in-law. At first, he was intimidated by the ferocity with which I had just gone berserk and hit his mother, so he didn't dare act out and sat there obediently like a quail. But he was used to being the little tyrant at home, and on top of that, from morning till now, no one had eaten a bite of food. The adults were barely holding on, let alone a child. He jumped right in front of me, kicked my leg, and barked orders like a little emperor. "Stupid woman, I'm hungry. Buy me a burger." My response was a sharp slap across his face. "Eat, eat, eat. That's all you think about. Your brother's in this state because of you, and you still have the nerve to ask for food." Everyone around knew the whole story through that farce and had no objections to me teaching the brat a lesson. But a spoiled child's bad behavior is cultivated over years. How could one slap make them behave? He immediately started screaming, unleashing an ultrasonic wave attack that made everyone waiting outside the emergency room frown in disgust. Before anyone could complain, I covered his mouth, grabbed his injured hand, firmly restrained him, and after apologizing to those around us, dragged him out. Walking to the deserted area behind the hospital, I let go, and he immediately rolled on the ground in pain. Unfortunately, there was no one here who cared about him. I stood coldly by, watching as he made a mess of himself, unmoved. Finally, when he felt the pain had lessened, had made enough of a scene, and, most importantly, was too weak from hunger to continue, he stood up, looking at me with some fear. "Tell me why you set off firecrackers at me. If you don't speak, you know what I'm capable of." I clenched my fist. The kid was smart enough to know he had no one to back him up now, so he didn't dare throw another tantrum. Under my threat, he spilled everything. "My mom said we should humiliate you at the wedding so it'd be easier to control you after marriage. That's why she told me to play with firecrackers in your wedding dress. What a stupid and vicious family. How pitiful that I didn't see through them before my wedding in my past life." Dong Dong followed me back to the emergency room with a pitiful look. Forget about getting food from me, he'd only get air to eat. As soon as I arrived there, a nurse called me over to pay the bill. How could I possibly be willing to pay Miles Chen? Pointing at my disheveled state, I forced a bitter smile and said I'd pay once my family arrived. The nurse was quite kind and understanding. We sat there for quite a while before my parents and Mr. Chen finally walked in. Afraid my parents might be persuaded to foot the bill, I rushed over and knelt before Mr. Chen in front of everyone, pleading desperately, "Dad, please, I beg you, use the wedding gift money to pay for Miles Chen's hospital fees. He's lying in the operating room right now. His life hanging by a thread. You can't just ignore your eldest son because you have a younger one." Yes, I am emotionally blackmailing him. Father Chen is a man of little capability, extremely calculating, but also obsessed with saving face. If I had directly asked him for the money, he would absolutely have found a way to make my parents pay instead. So I spoke up first to cut off his escape route. Seeing me like this, he instinctively covered the black bag in his hand, then seemed to think better of it and turned to my dad instead. "Look at this, in-law." I gave my mom a meaningful look, and our mother-daughter quickly made her understand. She promptly pulled my dad, who was about to speak, over to my side, unable to shift the blame and unwilling to pay the money. He clenched his bag strap and stood there, seemingly at a loss for words. How could I give him time to react? I immediately started kowtowing, speaking in a clear and articulate voice loud enough for everyone around to hear. "Dad, I beg you, Miles Chen is still young. As long as we have the money to treat him, he can definitely recover. Please don't give up on him." At this point, many of the onlookers began explaining the situation to the newcomers. It was that family. The elders used their mischievous younger son to set off firecrackers in the bride's wedding dress. Who would have thought the young couple was trendy? And it was their son wearing the dress. He got burned so badly and is still in critical condition. This family is really too much, unwilling to spend money even on their own son's treatment. The girl just wanted the wedding gift money, and they didn't even want to give that. Old Chen, hearing the murmurs around him, twitched his face and quickly stepped forward to help me up, shoving the black bag into my hands. "Child, what are you doing? I'm his father. Of course I'd sell everything to get him treated. Don't you worry." I stood up with his support. After taking the bag, he glanced at Dong Dong, who was silently tugging at him, and casually asked, "Where's your mom?" I kindly explained to him. "Mom is suspected of murder and has been taken away by the police." Mr. Chen was instantly stunned and stood frozen in place. "What?" Ignoring the frantic and furious Mr. Chen, I picked up my bag and took my parents to pay the fees for Miles Chen. I briefly explained to my parents on the way that it might have been Chen's mother who instructed someone to set off firecrackers in my wedding dress, all to humiliate me at the wedding and control me after marriage. My parents were both furious and terrified upon hearing this. My mom patted her chest and said to me, "Thank goodness it wasn't you wearing that dress. If it had been you lying in the operating room, how could we old folks have gone on living?" My dad patted my mom's back to calm her down, but he was also seething with anger. He turned to me and said, "Divorce? We're divorcing him. My precious daughter can't marry into such a family and suffer." I waved my hand, stuffed the remaining money from the paid bill into my own pocket, and walked out with my parents holding the empty bag. Not divorcing yet. His family is always afraid of losing out in marriage, insisting on splitting everything with us, and even playing tricks behind my back. I can't accept ending it like this. My mom froze for a moment looking at me, then smacked my head. "You silly girl, don't you dare grow a lovesick brain now." But I couldn't tell my parents about my past life, afraid they'd worry, so I just said I knew what I was doing and told them not to worry. Finally, they had no choice. My dad sighed and told me, "If you need anything, just tell us, don't suffer in silence." Speaking of which, I actually had something to say, no matter what they say. Our family must never lend them any money, not a single cent. After giving my parents these instructions, we returned to find that Miles Chen had already been moved out of the operating room and into the ICU, where he needed to be monitored for a while. At this point, Mr. Chen saw our family and couldn't wait to take the black bag from my hands. When he felt it was empty, his face darkened, but it seemed she still had something to ask of me, so she held back, forcing a smile and fawningly said, "Cleo, Miles Chen has already been rescued. What your mother did was indeed wrong, but she meant no harm. Could you talk to the police and get her released?" Release? Of course she'll be released. Someone like her wouldn't get a long sentence even if she went in. And besides, Miles Chen might not even want to press charges. Of course she'll have to come out. Just in time to face the ending I've prepared for her, I reached a verbal agreement with Mr. Chen, who promised to cover all of Miles Chen's medical expenses and ensure his full recovery. In return, I agreed to let Mrs. Chen out. Not feeling at ease letting my parents return home alone, I first escorted them back before going to pick up Mrs. Chen. When she saw me again, her eyes darted away, a far cry from her previous shrewish demeanor. The family of three reunited in front of the hospital room. After a tearful embrace, they surprisingly turned to leave together. Showing no intention of taking care of Miles Chen, I didn't stop them. When Miles Chen was out of danger and woke up in the general ward, covered head to toe in white bandages, he saw that I was the only one in the room with him. Noticing his eyes darting around, I understood what he meant and considerately told him, "Dong Dong got burned these past couple of days too. Mom and Dad are more worried about him, so they might not have much time for you right now. Don't overthink it." Hearing this, I saw the light in his eyes dim considerably. I sneered inwardly. Was he really feeling hurt already? In my past life, when I was lying in the hospital bed, they barged in and told me straight out that my parents had died in a car crash because of me, that they had no money left for my treatment, and then dragged me out of the hospital right then and there. But I'm a kind-hearted person. Knowing Dong Dong would come to the hospital for a dressing change today, I waited there in advance. When I saw this family of three, I didn't bother with words. I just grabbed Dong Dong and ran toward the ward. Of course, the parents couldn't just let it go. Instinctively, they chased after me. Once inside the ward, the couple started hurling abuse at me, not caring if it disturbed Miles Chen or even noticing that he was awake. With his parents backing him up, the brat Dong Dong tried to hit me. I dodged, and he ended up falling flat on the ground after missing his swing. The couple hurriedly came forward to help, and seizing the moment when they fell silent, I spoke weakly, "Mom, Dad, you promised before that you'd spare no expense to cure Miles Chen, even if it meant going bankrupt. Now that he's doing much better, don't you think we should send him to a hospital in the provincial capital? The medical care there is better than what we have here." Upon hearing this, Father Chen immediately retorted, "I've already asked the doctors. Even if his extensive burns heal, the skin grafts alone will cost a fortune, not to mention the potential long-term effects. He won't even be able to work in the future. We can't count on him to support us in our old age, so why bother treating him?" Mother Chen chimed in, "Exactly, the family's money is all for Dong Dong in the future. How can we waste it on this useless one?" I looked at Miles Chen lying on the hospital bed, his eyes closed and his whole body trembling, suppressing the laughter in my heart, and said, "But all this happened because of Dong Dong. You can't favor your younger son and ignore the life or death of your eldest son." Mrs. Chen rolled her eyes and retorted, "That's because he's useless. If he hadn't swapped clothes with you, this wouldn't have happened. He has no one to blame but himself." The family's shameless and unreasonable behavior was enough to make outsiders feel disheartened, let alone Miles Chen, who was lying vulnerable on the hospital bed. At that moment, like a complete love-struck fool, I immediately made a declaration of love. "If you won't take care of him, I will. I'll go live every day to earn money, and I will definitely cure him." Hearing this, Mrs. Chen's eyes lit up, and she immediately nudged Mr. Chen, who was about to speak, suddenly changing her tune. "Miles Chen is our son. Of course his treatment is our responsibility as his parents. When the time comes, we'll handle the live streams ourselves." Heh, I knew this family couldn't resist such blatant financial temptation. 1-inch hey folks, my son has extensive burns and still needs skin grafts. If you donate, I'll show you how burn patients go to the bathroom. Family, this young man got burned on his wedding day, didn't even get to the honeymoon. Can he still function down there? I'll answer that later, but first, let's see those donations roll in. Mr. and Mrs. Chen held their phones, completely disregarding Miles Chen's dignity, filming his burns daily. Viewers with morbid tastes would make bizarre requests, which they'd fulfill for money without hesitation. Sometimes when they filmed me, I didn't resist, performing the role of a devoted wife eagerly awaiting her husband's recovery all day long. They completely disregarded the patient's dignity and feelings. So when Miles Chen recovered enough to move slightly, he pointed outside the hospital room, telling the two to leave, but having already tasted the sweetness of live streaming, why would they listen? Even Dong Dong followed their example, holding up a phone to film Miles Chen every day. My brother got burned and looks like a caterpillar now, all black. Come on everyone, send tips. I'll live stream when they remove the bandages later, but now I'm playing the role of a devoted and loving wife. Just as the two of them were live streaming with great enthusiasm, I knelt down and shouted, Mom and Dad, you've earned money from live streaming too. Please, I beg you, give Miles Chen a skin graft. The two of them had been making money by selling their misery and bizarre antics, but my outburst scared them so much they quickly cut off the live stream. Miles Chen's mother glanced at him on the hospital bed with disdain. He's already burned so badly. What's the point of a skin graft? He's ugly enough as it is. Skin grafting for burns isn't just about aesthetics. Delaying the procedure can lead to severe consequences such as delayed wound healing, infections, sepsis, and even organ failure. However, these two were convinced that their eldest son would never fully recover from his burns and wouldn't be able to support them in their old age. They refused to spend another penny on him, only wanting to squeeze out whatever remaining value he had as quickly as possible. But that depends on whether I allow it. I straightened up and snapped at them. If you're unwilling to pay, I'll expose you to the media. You won't be able to exploit Miles Chen for profit anymore. Hearing this, Mr. and Mrs. Chen reluctantly did the math with grim expressions and grudgingly agreed. After everyone else had left, Miles Chen held my hand with tears of gratitude. Cleo, thank you. You're the only one who truly cares about me. I comforted him verbally, saying, don't cry. It's not good for your injuries. Don't worry. No matter what happens to you, I'll always love you. But deep down, I couldn't help but think sarcastically, this guy was just blaming me a couple of days ago when he could finally speak, saying it was my fault for swapping clothes with him that led to his burns. With a family like that, how could you expect anything good to come from bad stock? The Chen family agreed to provide skin grafts for Miles Chen, but they were unwilling to spend more money and insisted on the cheapest skin graft option from the doctor. I have no objections to this. For me, as long as he survives for now, nothing else matters. Post-surgery care is supposed to be meticulous, but the Chen parents forcibly took Miles Chen out of the hospital, claiming they couldn't afford the medical expenses. Of course, I had to go with them. Their family happened to be unwilling to take care of Miles Chen and were more than happy to have me there, so no one objected. After taking Miles Chen back home, their family started playing the victim, claiming they had no money left for post-surgery care and had no choice but to bring the child home. They continued filming Miles Chen without restraint. After they finished, I quietly found Dong Dong. Seeing him counting his live streaming earnings, I confronted him directly. No matter how much you earn, it's useless. All that money will have to be spent on your brother's treatment eventually. Now that he's back home, he feels he has support and isn't afraid of me at all. He snapped back, bullshit. My mom said everything in this house is meant for me. My brother is just a useless burden now. I sneered, so what? No matter what, your brother was raised by your parents, and didn't they pay the 100,000 yuan for his skin graft surgery? With that, I ignored him and went to the kitchen to cook for Miles Chen. Not long after, I heard the sound of Miles Chen's painful wailing coming from his room. I put down what I was holding and rushed in, only to see Dong Dong holding a stick while blood seeped from Miles Chen's body. That was the newly grafted skin being knocked open. Meanwhile, Dong Dong laughed at him without restraint. How ridiculous. Don't think acting pitiful will make mom and dad feel sorry for you. Let me tell you, everything in this house is mine. You won't get a single advantage." Hearing the commotion, the Chen parents rushed over. "Mr. Chen," immediately scolded, "why did you provoke your brother for no reason? The family paid for your surgery, and you didn't even take care of it properly. Now that there's a problem, don't expect us to pay for another one." Mrs. Chen pulled Dong Dong out of the room and suddenly shouted at me from the kitchen, "You wasteful woman, why didn't you turn off the gas if you weren't in the kitchen? Are you trying to poison the whole family?" At this moment, I noticed Miles Chen glancing toward the kitchen in pain. As a good wife, of course, I immediately went to comfort him, carefully examining the wound. Sure enough, a small piece was broken. With a heartbroken look, I cried, "What should we do now? A piece is broken. And your parents won't fix it for you. It's all my fault for being useless, for not having the money to get you surgery." Woo-woo. Miles Chen gasped in pain but still managed to comfort me. "No, it's not your fault, it's all they're doing." The hatred in his eyes was chilling to behold. I said to him firmly, "Let's monitor it for a few days first. If it gets worse, I'll go out and borrow money if I have to. I'll make sure you get treated." Hearing this, a glimmer of hope seemed to rekindle in his heart. The way he looked at me was filled with gratitude, as if I were the love of his life. If I hadn't seen him look at every member of the family with equal hatred, I might have believed it. I know he hates me. He believes his burns were suffered in my place. I have to admit, his intuition is sometimes quite accurate. Miles Chen's injuries weren't improving. The poor conditions at home, combined with my lack of genuine attentive care, caused his wounds to worsen. I showed him the information I found online. The internet says if you don't get this treated soon, your condition might worsen, and it could even kill you. What should we do? Right now, mom and dad only see you as a cash cow. They don't want to treat your illness." As I spoke, I started crying. "Miles Chen, what should we do? You're going to die. What should we do? I don't want you to die." Every day, apart from begging the Chen family to treat Miles Chen, I repeated these words to him. Finally, as his injuries grew increasingly severe, the light in his eyes began to fade. He asked me to help him exercise, saying he wanted to use the bathroom on his own and reclaim his dignity. I certainly respected him and quickly brought him a wheelchair that very day. The Chen family is becoming increasingly unreasonable. They believe every penny in the household is theirs, all to be left to Dong Dong in the future. Now they've even started eyeing the money in my pocket and from my parents' family. When they saw me bring back the wheelchair, they scolded me for being wasteful, spending money on a useless person and squandering resources. The light in Miles Chen's eyes grew increasingly dim, and he began sitting in his wheelchair, frequently gazing toward the kitchen. I sensed something was wrong and started making excuses every day to go out and borrow money for his surgery, running out each time. But every evening, I would return with a look of despair and tell him I hadn't managed to borrow anything. Of course, to make it convincing, I really did go out to try borrowing money. However, the people I borrowed money from were all Miles Chen's friends and relatives. My own friends and relatives are all out of town, so it wasn't easy to borrow from them. Some kind-hearted ones were willing to lend me 1,000 or so, while others refused. I didn't push them too hard, with me not at home. That family's live streaming became even more excessive, which took an even heavier toll on Miles Chen's mental and physical well-being. Watching their live stream, I felt that what they were doing would drive any normal person insane within days, especially Miles Chen, who is already in a very fragile state of mind right now. Finally, one day before I was about to go out again, Miles Chen grabbed my hand. "Don't go out." "Okay, anyway, I can't be cured anymore. If I die, so be it. I just want you to spend one last good day with me." Damn, I almost jumped up when I heard that. Don't think I don't know how many sleeping pills this guy hid while I was resting, or how many times he practiced sneaking into the kitchen alone. The Chen family wouldn't even glance at him outside of live streams, finding him an eyesore. Only I, who didn't mind staying by his side, set up a small bed in his room to care for him. And only I noticed, he's planning to make his move, from his perspective. I've been good enough, haven't I? Even when he's like this, I've stuck by him, lent him money for treatment, and fought with his family so he could get skin grafts. He actually wanted to take me down with him in one go. I always said nothing good could come from a family like that. Of course, I had no intention of burning bridges, but I shouted excitedly, "No, I won't let you give up. I'll keep going out to borrow money today. Sooner or later, I'll get enough for your surgery. Don't lose heart." Hearing this, he hung his head and asked me, "Don't you love me? Aren't you willing to stay with me forever, to be with me for all eternity?" I really have to wonder if my brain was clouded by lard before. How could I have ended up with such a thing? But the show must go on. I shook him off directly, grabbed my coat, and walked out. After a few steps, with tears welling up in my eyes, I turned back to look at him. "Of course I want to be with you forever. How could you doubt my love for you? I'll go borrow money right now, even if I have to crawl on my knees. I'll get the money for your surgery. We'll be together from now on." He stared at me intently without saying a word. I didn't wait for his response either and turned to leave. After stepping out, I thought for a moment and ran to borrow money from my friends. They all knew about my situation and, unable to persuade me to leave, generously offered what they could. Then I had my parents transfer me some money as well. And after some thought, I went ahead and borrowed from a few online lending platforms. At one point, I opened the Chen family's live stream to take a look. I don't know what got into them today, but they were even more outrageous than usual. It felt like they didn't even treat Miles Chen as a human being. He had less dignity than a circus monkey being gawked at by the crowd. None of them noticed the frequent glances Miles Chen kept casting toward the kitchen, until the live stream ended. I went to a fast food restaurant and ordered the cheapest meal. After eating, I sat there spacing out for a long time. Then, I kept searching on my phone for information about skin grafting and related topics until late at night, when I slowly made my way to Miles Chen's house. Before I even reached their door, I keenly caught a whiff of a rotten egg smell. I quickly took a few steps back in alarm, hurried downstairs to call 119 on my phone, and then dialed the police. Their family's misdeeds might harm the neighbors, and that wouldn't be good. The police arrived quickly. After evacuating the residents of the neighborhood, the firefighters went up to ventilate the room by opening the windows. A long time later, they came down and told me, "I'm sorry, but your family members have all passed away." Soon, the police and ambulances went up. The case is quite simple. A man, burned due to his younger brother's actions, chose to turn on the gas and take his entire family's lives because of the harsh treatment from his relatives. His newlywed wife, who was also intended to be killed, survived because she went out to borrow money out of concern for his condition. A marketing account learned of this incident and wrote an article about the man's ordeal. It also stated, out of love, he decided to spare her life. This incident quickly gained traction online, with Miles Chen being dubbed the god of pure love, receiving much praise, which is quite ironic. He didn't become famous while alive, but turned into an internet celebrity after death. I wonder if Miles Chen would feel comforted knowing his wish came true in such a way. As for me, the sole survivor of the Chen family, Miles Chen's wife inherited the majority of the family's assets, including the money the Chen family recently earned from live streaming. To be honest, I have no qualms about taking the donations from those who watched the Chen family's bizarre and sensational live streams. After finally settling the Chen family's property, I repaid the borrowed money and, under the sympathetic gazes of many, left the place and returned to my hometown. For the rest of my life, I want to spend it with my family.